So everyone's talking about this amazing war. Amazing. Putin gets up, he decides he's invading, and he walks in, tens of thousands of troops, maybe hundreds of thousands, tanks, brigades, bombings. Yeah. Lev milachim biyad Hashem. It's not him. He's doing nothing. And the proof is, nothing makes sense. Does not make sense. The whole story is just unbelievable. But when it doesn't make sense, that's exactly Hashem's wink. It's His signature at the bottom of the painting that says, I'm the one behind this. And I'm doing this. And I'm doing it for you, Klal Yisrael. Everything I did and everything I'm doing is with the Jewish people in mind. Not just the Jewish people in America, not just the Jewish people in Israel, even the Jewish people in Ukraine, which they're in danger. And there are Jews on both sides of the fight. But at the same time, Borei Olam is running the entire show. Amazing. And right away, we hear these incredible, incredible words in the book of Likutei HaGaon, the Vilna Gaon, that talks about the concept of Gog and Magog, and how according to him, Gog is the leader of Russia, and he explains why and how and who they represent. And you start hearing these amazing things. And we start getting excited. Oh, the Gemara told us that right before Shvi'it, right before Shemitah, the world is going to be judged right before Mashiach comes. I mean, wasn't that the perfect scenario of Corona? Every single country in the entire world was judged. Mi yichyeh u'mi yamut. And then right after that, it leads right up to the middle of the year of Shemitah. And now the wars begin. My gosh, Rabbi, it's happening exactly the way the Gemara said. Then in the year of Shemitah, the Milchamot will begin. And then the year right after that, Ben David Ba. That's what the Gemara says. Rabbi, we're right on schedule. It's working out and planning itself out perfectly. And didn't you hear the Vilna Gaon? And the truth is, you could be 100% right. But there's a big part to this puzzle that we're still missing. And that is me and you. The great Chafetz Chaim writes in the Hakdama to the Sefer Chafetz Chaim, he says, after all the prophecies and all the signs and all the simanim, and the reason for Mashiach not coming until today is not anything to do with Hashem's will. Ki im mitzidenu. That's a quote. It's mitzidenu. It's because of us. Because we still didn't come around and do teshuvah. It's because we still didn't get the memo yet, what we need to do in order for Mashiach to come. And therefore you can have all the signs, and everything could be playing out perfectly, on schedule, on time. And you can have the prophecies, and the Vilna Gaon, Corona, Putin, Gog and Magog, year of Shemitah, my gosh, we got it all. It's all lined up. It's as if the ducks were lined up in perfect sequence. Says a Chafetz Chaim. And with all that, you're still missing the main ingredient. The main ingredient to the recipe of bringing Mashiach, says the Chafetz Chaim, Ki im mitzidenu. It's all about us. If we don't do our part, if we don't fill in that last step, you could have the et ratzon, you could have all the signs, the perfect prophecies, and He will not come. And therefore, if you're the person that's hanging on the news every 5 minutes, and if you're checking every step of the way of the advancements of Russia, and what Putin said, and what Biden claims, and what this one, and the United Nations, Fantastic. But you're missing the biggest piece to this puzzle. You're missing the makupatish, the deciding factor of if Klal Yisrael is going to come to Geula or not. Says Chafetz Chaim, I'll prove it to you. I'll prove to you that the coming of Mashiach is talui in us more than any other siman, more than any other year, more than any other et ratzon, more than any other war. And he goes back, way back, to the days of Yehezkel. And he says, Hashem told him, if you would have done teshuvah Klal Yisrael, he would have brought Mashiach then. What do you mean? But it was before the time. We were told that the last 1,000 years is the time of the coming of Mashiach. And that last 1,000 years was going to be destined for the Geulah. And that period was before that. Says the Chafetz Chaim, what do you see from here? That even if the time is on or the time is off, at the end of the day, the bringing of Mashiach is still talui ki im mitzideinu. It's talui mitzad us. If we do the Mashiach, we could have brought it early. If we did teshuvah rather, we could have brought it early. And now we're deep into the last 1,000. We're already past all the signs, past all the kitzim, past all the times, all the et ratzon. And here we are again. The ducks are lined up perfectly. You have all the signs you want, with the prophecy, with the Gaon, with everything. But says the Chafetz Chaim, don't forget. But the only way Hashem set up the table for you perfectly. Now what are you going to do with it? Now what are you going to do? If you think you're going to sit back and just watch the news and say, this is it, this is it, this is it, this is it. I'm buying my tickets to Israel, this is it. Which is great, it's great. But we need to do more than that. We need to come across with a teshuvah. We need to come across with kabbalot, with a Kabbalah, to stop speaking Lashon Hara, to stop ripping people apart, to stop tongue-lashing family members and friends and neighbors, to stop, to put away all the garbage that got us into this galut, and to finally be mitaken with a real new change of a teshuvah and start anew. And say, Borei Olam, I see what's going on. I want to contribute to the Geulah. You know, we started this new system, the new series that we started, Shmirat HaLashon online, where every day there are halachot, and every day there's an email that goes out, and there's an audio, and it's written up in actually an email form of text. It's like on all levels, so you can't miss out on it. It's perfect. And if you take a look, you'll see it. It's all you have to do is send an email to info@itorah.com. I mean, it's that easy. info@itorah.com. And you just tell them, please add me to the Shmirat HaLashon list. And every day you get a halacha. Shmirat HaLashon. You can listen to the audio if you don't want to read it. Or you can read it out by lunch if you'd prefer to read. It's in a textual form. They also have a link to the video if you want to see it. You know, what tie is the rabbi wearing that day? You know, and you come out doing something. You come out with a Kabbalah that I am making sure that I'm going to take upon myself something that will bring the Geulah closer, because I see what's going on and I got the wink from heaven and I want to act on it. Because I realized that you could have all the nevuah and all the simanim and all the et ratzon, and if we don't do our part, we're still out of business. So what do we got to do? So we just mentioned Shmirat HaLashon is huge. To stop speaking Lashon Hara, I tell you, I've watched over the years how many families were destroyed. Good families, really good families. Because this plagued the family inside and out. The closest of brothers don't talk to each other for years. The closest of family members don't go to each other's smachot anymore. They're barely civil. And it all started with the Lashon, with one downgrading the other. Sometimes it started with people that married into the family, where the brothers were great before they got married, but then the wives didn't get along. So now the sister-in-laws created a storm inside a family that didn't know what hit them. Didn't know what hit them. And the husband stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's stuck between his family and his wife. Very bad tug of war to be in. And there's this downward spiral of all types of terrible lashon hara and rechilut, and it rips and destroys great families. So the first step is, the way we got into this is the way we got to get out. We got into the galut with sinat chinam. We got into the galut with lashon hara. That's the way we're out. That's the first Kabbalah. Again, if you want to sign up to it, info@itorah.com. You can't miss it. Every day you get an email, you go through the halakha. Besides what the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva wrote, he says, I have yet to find someone who started learning the daily halachot of Shmirat HaLashon and wasn't zochet to the biggest yeshuot that they were waiting for. Because this is from the biggest avodah today. It's the avodah of bringing Klal Yisrael to Geulah, bringing shalom between us, saving families instead of destroying them, saving interrelationships instead of destroying them. Not just the Geulah. What about the peace of mind? What about your life? What about your quality of living? But there's another thing that I'd like to talk about tonight. That's really what I came out tonight to speak about. We're coming from a Shabbat of Shekalim. Last week, Parashat Vayakel. This week, Parashat Pikudei. I want to share with you something that I think is amazing. If you take a good look, right before the month of Adar, they would be machriz, they would announce, Be'echad Adar, mashmi'in ala Shekalim. It's a Mishnah. On the first of Adar, by Rosh Chodesh Adar, they would announce to remind everybody to bring the shekel, the mahatzita shekel, for the upkeep of the Bet HaMikdash. Everybody would bring a half a shekel for the upkeep, the korbanot, the maintenance for the great Bet HaMikdash. Amazing. Now we don't have a Bet HaMikdash. So now we do Zecher L'Mahatzita Shekel, which coming up now, Purim time, you're going to be hearing in Shul. Don't forget, when you say it, make sure you say Zecher. Zecher L'Mahatzita Shekel. Do you know that this Mahatzita Shekel, when it came time to describe it in the Torah, in this week's parasha, Pikudei, the Torah describes it as becca la gulgolet. That's such a funny word, becca. Says Rashi, that word describes a measurement. Becca is the measurement of a half a shekel. Becca la gulgolet. Interesting. So, I'm coming to tell you that you need to bring a certain amount of money, and it's incumbent upon everybody to bring this for the sake of the upkeep of the Mishkan later on, Bet HaMikdash. How much do you need to bring? Half a shekel. So the Torah uses this foreign word that we never heard of, becca, which is a measurement of how much? Mahatzita shekel. Now, if the Torah already described to you the amount called mahatzita shekel, and we know what that amount is, why would you bring me this foreign word, which is the measurement of something that I already know? Could you imagine that? I want to tell you to bring $1 in tomorrow to shul. So am I going to go and come up with a fancy word that's foreign to me and you, that's going to be translated to describe the amount of $1, and I tell you, do me a favor, tomorrow bring X, Y, and Z. But by the way, that's the measurement of $1. Rabbi, just tell me bring $1 tomorrow. Just tell me bring $1. I'll bring you $1. What's the becca? Why are we talking in code words? to describe to me a measurement and an amount of money that I already know what that amount is. Just tell me, bring mahatzita shekel. All over the Torah they talk about mahatzita shekel. I need a separate foreign code word to explain to me how much that is. There's something about this word that's describing another aspect of this mahatzita shekel more than what meets the eye. Yes, how much is becca? It's the amount of a half a shekel. But I could have told you half a shekel. So if I'm telling you the foreign word becca, it must be bringing out another prism to the concept of mahasit ha-shekel. And the question is, what's the secret behind this funny word? What is becca? You know, the Vilna Gaon tells us that the first time that a word is used in Torah, that's its true essence. So if you ever want to know the proper, real translation of a word, take a look at the first time it's used in Torah, and that will be the actual essence of what that word really means. So here's an interesting trivial question. Did we ever have this word becca before? So says the Zera Emet in his great sefer, and this is something that the Shvili Pinchas goes to town on. He says, yeah, the word becca is used way back in the beginning of the Torah, all the way back in the book of Bereshit. You know where the word becca is used? In one of the most loftiest of stories. In the story of none other than Akedat Yitzchak. Vayivaka atze ola. Vayivaka atze ola. And they smashed in half, with an axe. Vayivaka atze ola. They broke in half the wood to be used for the olah, which turned out to be Yitzchak. The word vayibaka means to smash in half. Right? Amazing. So b'akedat Yitzchak, we see the word becca, vayibaka. It means to smash in half. Where else is this word used? So if we roll a little bit further down the parashiyot, not too far, right over there again in the book of Bereshit, we find the word becca another time. Here is the great moment of the shidduch. Yitzchak Avinu needs to get married. So Abraham sends his trusty servant Eliezer. Eliezer comes to the house of Bituel and Lavan, Harasha. And he tells Hashem, please, help me on my mission. Let me find the right girl for the son of my master, for Yitzchak Avinu, the future mother of Klal Yisrael. This is a big mission. Eliezer comes and says, I'm asking Hashem, make me a sign. The girl that's going to come and demonstrate her heart of kindness, of chesed, acts of chesed. She already has the stamp of the family Abraham Avinu. She's going to ask me, do I want to drink? Do I need a place to stay? Can I give your camels to drink? That's the girl that's going to be the chosen one, the one that I should be going after to bring home. And sure enough, just as he finished praying and saying, who shows up? Rivka Imenu. And she turns to him and he says, can I give you to drink? Do you need a place to stay? Can I give your camels to drink? Can I give you to drink? Can I take care of you in some which way? Oh! Immediately, what does he do? He takes out the nezim. He takes out the nose ring. And quickly, he gives it to her. And the Torah says, hey, you know that nose ring that he gave her? By the way, I want to tell you, becca mishkalo. It was the weight of a becca. Wow. There's the word again. Becca mishkalo. By the first shidduch that the Torah talks about, this is the first marriage ever meant, the first shidduch ever mentioned in Torah. There's the word again. Round 2, becca. Becca mishkalo. The amount of gold and the weight of what that nose ring was the weight of a becca. So the first time this word was mentioned, Akedat Yitzchak, says the Zera Emet, one of the greatest moments in history. Vayibaka atze ola, right? The second time it was mentioned by the first Shidduch of Klal Yisrael. Becca mishkalo. That was the weight of the gold, the nose ring that he gave her. Unbelievable. The third time that this incredible word is going to be mentioned, and that's none other than in Kriya Yam Suf. And it's there in Kriya Yam Suf that the Torah tells you, Vayibak'u hamayim. Vayibak'u hamayim. Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe. Ze Eli anu ve'amru. Why is it? We're on a roll tonight. Listen to me. This is wild. We found this word. We're not sure what it meant. Rashi tells us it's a weight that describes a amount that we already know what it is, so it's weird why we needed a description in the first place. The word becca, brought by Mahasita Shekel, and then when we start doing our homework, we realize that this interesting word, says the Zera Emet, was already found 4 times in the Torah, but in such auspicious places, in the most powerful moments of the entire Torah. The first time, Akedat Yitzchak, Vayibaka Atzeh Hola. The second time by the first Shidduch of Klal Yisrael, Becca Mishkalo, the nose ring. The third time was by Kriya Yam Suf, Vayibak'u hamayim, the water is split in half. And then now, the fourth time, this week's parasha, describing the Mahasita Shekel, Becca, La Gilgolet, the amount of a half a shekel, as if we took the shekel and we broke it in half. The way we broke the sea in half, the way they broke the wood in half for the Atzeh Olah. It's amazing. What's up with this word Becca? But take a look. It's mentioned in 4 of the most important places of Torah. So says the Zera Emet, it's not a coincidence. There's a great common denominator that this word is bringing out in these 4 incredible places. Akedat Yitzchak, Shidduch of Rivka Imenu, Kriya Yam Suf, and Mahasita Shekel. What is the common denominator of these 4 incredible moments in the history of Klal Yisrael written through the Torah itself? Rabotai, open your hearts. Says the Zera Emet something off the charts. And I want you to hear this. He says, I think you're missing out on what the point of Mahasita Shekel was all about. And if you delve into this a little bit more deep, you may find out what this word Becca was really describing, not just there, but in all the other places that the word was mentioned in Torah. The word Shekel is Gematria. How much is Shekel Gematria? 430, right? Shin is 300, Kuf is 100, Lamed is 30, right? So Shekel is Gematria 430. Nefesh is Gematria 430. Mesirat Shekel is the same as Mesirat Nefesh. Mahatzita Shekel means to break the shekel. It means to break your nefesh. Mesirut nefesh, mesirut shekel. It's the exact same idea. How do I know that I'm talking about not just stam, a half a coin, but I'm talking about I want you to break the nefesh and give me something of yours. I don't need your money, says God. If you want to come and build a Mishkan, I want a piece of everybody inside that Mishkan. I want a Mesirut Nefesh from every Jew in Klal Yisrael if you want to build God's house. I don't need your money. I don't need the donations. I need you. The only way to build the house of Borei Olam is with Mesirut Nefesh of every single Jew. Everyone is required to give a Mahasita Shekel. He needs to dig into his pocket and pull out a piece of himself and give it over to the Mishkan for God to rest in this house. Because without Mesirut Nefesh, nothing goes. This is the most important ingredient of every single recipe in Judaism. With Mesirut Nefesh, things work miraculously. Without Mesirut Nefesh, it just doesn't go. So how do I bring home this point? That when I want you to give that Mahatzita Shekel, I really want you to give something of yourself over to God. Give me a piece of you. Be Moser Nefesh a little bit, so that Hashem could rest in this house. How do I describe that? Becca. Vayibaka. Break yourself. Don't just give me half a shekel. But shekel is the same gematria as nefesh. Becca la golgolet. Break the nefesh. Give me a piece of you. Show me sacrifice. Show me a little sacrifice on your part. And that's why it made no difference whether you were rich, whether you were poor. Every Jew had this obligation to give this mahatzita shekel to the house of Hashem. Because if every Jew is moser nefesh, we can build Hashem's house. That's the house I'll rest in. Says Borei Olam, the description of mahatzita shekel is not the money, but it's you. Give me something of yours. You know what Mesirut Nefesh is about? You know what it means to sacrifice? It means that really it would have been more comfortable for you to do without, or to keep it to yourself, or enjoy it on your own. And instead you gave up something of yours for the sake of God. Mahatzita Shekel was not a donation. Mahatzita Shekel was a demonstration. I'm demonstrating that I'm ready to give something that I would have rather kept in my own pocket, and take it out and give it up instead for the sake of God. That's becca. Mesirut Nefesh. Smash the shekel. Shekel is gematria nefesh. Mesirut shekel, giving over the shekel, is really Mesirut nefesh. And that's why it's described as becca la golgolet. Because the same vayibaku atzehola that happened by Akedat Yitzchak, which was the greatest act of Mesirut nefesh that we've ever seen in history. And at the same time, when it came to Shidduchim, says the Torah, Becca Mishkalo, because anyone who knows anything knows that without Mesirut Nefesh, marriage doesn't work. It's the biggest ingredient for marriage. To be able to break your Nefesh. To be able to break your Teva. To be able to get along with somebody else. Two people come together from totally different ends of the spectrum. They're completely different people. Brought up in different places, in different families, in different surroundings. And suddenly they're brought together. And suddenly they were meant to somehow or other mesh and become as one, in harmony, in unison. How in the world does that work? After the first year, and of course those young infatuations wear off, and real life begins, and real relationship begins. And that's when the work starts. For some people it starts a month into marriage. Already they realize, wait one second. This is not as simple as I thought. I used to come and go when I wanted. I didn't have to say, I didn't have to ask. I didn't have to care. I lived on my own. I went when I wanted, came when I wanted. I had no one to answer to. I was this guy that was stam, free and running. And now I have a responsibility to somebody. Now I have to take another person into every iota of every decision I'm going to make in life. You need Mesirut Nefesh. You need to literally be Becca Mishkalo. You need to break your nefesh. You got to break your teva. And that's the reason why by a wedding, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, when we break that glass, that kos that we break, that kos that we smash, by every wedding. Yes, there's no question. The regular reason, as we all know, in Meshkachech Yerushalayim, it's to remember at the great moments of Simcha that still Hashem's house was not rebuilt and there was a destruction. There's no question that there's still that great hurt of a destruction of Bet HaMikdash. No question about it. But there's another aspect. And the other aspect simply is that the word hanefesh, the word hateva rather, the word hateva, the nature of a person, the word hateva is Gematria 86. The word kos is Gematria 86. So we take this kos under the chuppah, which is Gematria hateva, the nature of a person, and we smash it. And we send home a very big message to Chatan and Kala. You want this to work? You got to break your teva, or else it's not going to work. This is mahatzit hashekel, becca la gulgolet. The becca of the mahatzit shekel is not coming to describe the amount. I already know mahatzit shekel is a half a shekel. That's what the words mean. Do I need another word to tell me something that I already know? No. Becca is coming to tell you something about the mahatzit shekel. It's coming to describe to you vayibaka atzehola. They smashed the wood to have it for the great sacrifice of the greatest showing Mesirut Nefesh in history, Akedat Yitzchak. That Becca is the same sacrifice that Hashem wanted when you gave that Mahatzita Shekel. Because Shekel is Gematria Nefesh. I want you to go and Becca Lagog. I want you to break the Nefesh. I want Mesirat Shekel, which is Mesirat Nefesh. Because the only way to build a Mishkan that the Shekhinah is going to come and rest in, is only with Mesirat Nefesh. In Judaism, the biggest ingredient in the recipe of any Hatzlacha is Mesirat Nefesh. If there's Mesirut Nefesh, things move. And the Siyata Deshmaya. And at times you can see Nisim and Flaot. And if there's no Mesirut Nefesh, forget about it. At least not when it comes to Avodat HaKodesh. So the Torah wanted to come home and tell you that in these 4 places, what made that amazing moment in history was the Mesirut Nefesh that was placed at that time. Akedat Yitzchak, vayibaka Mesirut Nefesh. The first shidduch in history. Yitzchak Avinu needs a wife. Rivka. Yes, he put a nose ring on her. What type? Becca Mishkalo. Becca. And you know, the Zera Emet says that Abraham Avinu instructed Eliezer, he told him, when you go and find a girl for my son, I want you to give her a nose ring. Becca Mishkalo. So that when you're giving her this nose ring, she should know that the man that she's betrothed to is Becca. Becca means Mesirut Nefesh, smashing down on one's self to give over to God. Tell her that the one you're coming to engage her to is a child. He is Pashut, the result of the greatest act of Mesirut Nefesh ever done. This is Yitzchak Avinu, who already went through Akedat Yitzchak. So when you give her that ring, tell her, Becca Mishkalo. This is the one you're getting engaged to. You know who he is? He's the one of Vayibaka Atzeola. He's the one that already went through the greatest act of Mesirut Nefesh. So you need to know what you're getting into. You're getting into a husband that's kol kulo Mesirut Nefesh Lashem. Are you ready to step up to a life that and be an Ezer Kenegdo? And that was the hint, the siman that Eliezer was giving to Rivka when he handed her the nose ring, Becca Mishkalo. Know that this is the one that's going Vayibaka Atzeola. Amazing. And that's what happened. That was Kriya Yam Suf. Vayibaku hamayim. There is the word again, becca. Vayibaku hamayim. There will be no Kriya Yam Suf without Mesirut Nefesh. If we don't have a nachshon that's going to jump in and have the water come up to his nostrils, where he's literally at the brink of about to drown, for the sake of Klal Yisrael, there's no Kriya Yam Suf. You can't have a Kriya Yam Suf without Mesirut Nefesh. Somebody has to jump in and be ready to die for that seat to split for everybody else. Nothing moves in Judaism without Mesirut Nefesh. Hence, the word came back again a third time in Torah, Vayibaku hamayim, which, by the way, you got to ask yourself the famous question of the Gera Rebbe, Zechet Tzadik Lebracha. He says, why do we call it Kriya Yam Suf? Torah never used the word Kriya anywhere. You won't find it anywhere. It's always Biki'ah, Vayibaku hamayim, Bokei Yam Lifnei Moshe. Where's this term Kriya Yam Suf come from? And we spoke about this in the past. But I'm bringing out to you that although Kriya came from Klal Yisrael when they walked through, we spoke about this in the past, Rabbeinu Bachya, but it needed to start with Mesirut Nefesh. And that's why the Torah highlights not Kriya, but Vayibaku hamayim. Because without the Biki'ah, without someone smashing it open, being ready to die for it, it's not going to happen. And that was Nachshon. And there's no difference. Tedalecha. There is no difference between Akedat Yitzchak, Vayibaka Atze Olah, and Kriya Yam Suf, Vayibaku hamayim. It's the same Mesirut Nefesh. That's what the word, that's what the code word here is coming to scream out. So when it comes to Avodat HaKodesh, we learned from Akedat Yitzchak, Vayibaka, Mesirut Nefesh, you'll be zochet to huge Avodat HaKodesh. No Mesirut Nefesh, you ain't going nowhere. And anybody who's out there in the line of Avodat HaKodesh knows it was the guys that were ready to die for something that saw Hatzlacha in life. And the guys that were being yotzeh and punching a clock, they went home as quick as they came. I'm telling you from years of experience, years of hiring rabbis. We have a Merkaz HaTorah here. We have a whole Torah center here. Which were the rabbis that were matzliach and which were the ones that weren't? The ones that came in with the will to want to turn over the world and teach Torah to another guy. The guy that realized that the job, so to speak, if you want to call it that he stepped up to is not a 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, but this guy's on the phone with his guys afterwards, and they call him by work during the day by lunch, and they say, hey, I have a kasha on what we learned last night, and he runs with them. And when the guy doesn't show up, he calls him up and says, hey, where are you? We miss you. The guy's not just punching a clock. He's doing Mesirut Nefesh for the job. Those are guys of Matzliach, because that's the biggest ingredient in the recipe of Avodat HaKodesh. Where do we get that from? Akedat Yitzchak, Vayibaka, Bokeya, Biki'ah. And when it comes to marriage, the second time in Torah, there it is, becca mishkalo. He gave her a nose ring, becca mishkalo. And it's amazing to me, people always want to know, where did the ring come from under the chuppah when we marry a girl? Anybody learned the sugyot in Kiddushin? You don't have to get that far. The first Mishnah, you have to get that far. There's only 3 ways that the Mishnah talks about that you're able to be Mekadesh and Isha. Right? Ketubah we don't do because there's an issue of the Ketubah of Kinyan and the Ketubah of the actual Ketubah of Tnaim. So we don't do it not to get them mixed up. When it comes to Bi'ah, Hayom Hazeh, no one's on that Madrega. And because of that, we don't go there either. So what do we do today? We do a kinyan kesef, right? Everybody. That's why the rabbi under the chuppah, he turns to the chatan, he turns to the eidim, and he looks at the ring and he says, Shavapruta. And until today I laugh, Rabbi, you're embarrassing the guy, you know what I'm saying? In front of his new wife, you know what I'm saying? Shavapruta. But we have to ask. You have to ask. Because they want to know if this kinyan is going to validate itself in the way of kesef. And in order for it to be validated, it has to be shaveh pruta. So he asks, is the ring shaveh pruta? But wait one second, where did the ring come from? And because of that, be'emet, some people under the chuppah have the minhag that they're mikadesh with a coin. I've been by many, many such chuppot by the Svaradim, especially from certain edot, that their minhag is to be mikadesh under the chuppah with a coin. He hands her the coin. Hariyat mikudeshetli. Literally, hariyat mikudeshetli. He says it to her, not b'tabadzu, but rather with the coin. And she takes it in front of the Edim. And that is the Kesef Kiddushin. Where did this come from? You know where the ring came from? Says the Zera Emet. And the Zohar HaKadosh talks about this as well. The reason why the minhag is to give a tabat, a ring, is to remind Chatan and Kala of the first shidduch mentioned in Torah, the shidduch of Rivka Imenu. That when Eliezer found her, that she went and did the acts of kindness. He took a nezim, he took a ring. Granted, it wasn't a finger ring, it was a nose ring, but he took a ring and he gave it to her. L'shem de kiddushin. And that ring was becca mishkalo. So the ring was describing the essence of marriage. It was describing becca. It's a heads up, it's a message. A delicate one, of course, but it's a message to the young girl that's about to get married. We are reenacting the moment that Eliezer gave the first ring in Kiddushin to the first bride mentioned in Torah, none other than Rivka Imenu, the first shidduch that was spoken about in Parashat Hayesara. And on that ring, you should know that the Torah went out of its way to tell you that it was becca mishkalo, to tell you that the ring is the symbolism of the concept of mesirut nefesh for marriage to work. And after he hands her the ring and reminds her of that first shidduch, telling the kala that you should know, the chatan that you're about to take now was the product of the greatest act of mesirut nefesh in the world. Your husband is none other than the Yitzchak from Akedah Yitzchak. So you need to understand that the only way marriage is going to work is only with real breaking of the teva. And then right after that, what do? We break the kos. Because the kos is gematria hateva. To show her that this is be'emet the becca concept. If you want marriage to work, we got to break the teva. We need mesirut nefesh. That's the only way that two absolutely different people coming together could stim in a marriage long term, is if both are willing to be moser nefesh for the marriage to work. Otherwise, forget it. No, so what about the other tzad where they give the coin? I mean, where did that come from? Says Chazal, what do you mean? That's the other becca. The coin was Zechel machatzita shekel. So when he gives the coin, he's reminding her, I'm giving you the coin the way originally Klal Yisrael gave their coins to build the Bayit Ne'eman. I want to build the Bayit Ne'eman with you. What was the coin that Klal Yisrael gave to build the Mishkan? Becca la Gulgolet, this week's parasha, Pikudeh. Becca coin. It was a coin of Mesirut Nefesh. Says Borei Olam, you want to build a house for me? I need to see Mesirut Nefesh. You need to take something from you and give it up for me. And it doesn't matter, hadal lo yamit, rich, poor, it makes no difference. We need this recipe in order to build a house for God. So we hand the girl the coin. Hariyat mikudeshetli. You remember this coin? This is Zechel mahasita shekel. Becca la gulgolet. If you want this marriage to work and you want to build a house that's ke'en ume'en, the mishkan, it has to be Becca. It has to be Mesirut Nefesh. Because Mesirat Shekel is the same gematria as Mesirat Nefesh. That's an amazing idea. And this teaches us that when it comes to basically all the important aspects of life, Avodat HaKodesh, marriage, what about Yeshuot? Isn't Kriya Yam Suf the paradigm for all Yeshuot? Isn't Kriya Yam Suf that moment that person's a really scary matziv? Really scary situation. He has Paro and Ridifut chasing him from behind. His nose is up against the water, he's about to drown. Rabbi, I'm drowning. Help me. I can't get out of this situation. Oh, so what are you asking for? You're asking for a Kriya Yam Suf, aren't you? Aren't you? Isn't that what the Gemara Daf Bet and Sotah tells us? That kashin, all the kashins, all the difficulties, all the kashins, kashin zivugo kriya, kashin parnasatan ke kriya Yam Suf, kashin betan ke kriya Yam Suf, all the difficult moments of life brings you right back to Surfside, not in Florida. I'm talking about in the Kriya Yam Suf. Right back at that point, you got the water coming up to your nose. You feel like I'm drowning. I'm drowning. And behind you, you hear the thundering of the horses. They're coming after you. There's no place to go. I need a Yeshua. I need major Kriya Yam Suf Yeshua. What does the Torah tell you? Oh, you need a Yeshua. Vayibaku hamayim. You want to smash open the waters? Smash open yourself first. We need becca. We need bokeya. We need this unbelievable concept to break the net. We need mesirut nefesh. And it's amazing. We can tell 100 stories of people that were in difficult moments of life. And the minute they started a little mesirut nefesh, and they were ready to be machniya themselves. They were ready to be machniya themselves. They were ready to throw themselves in the water and do something out of the ordinary. You think Nachshon did something in the ordinary? Who do you know jumps into the water and then literally was about to drown? But sometimes you got to break out of that box and say, okay, Boreal, I'm closing my eyes and I'm going to jump in. I'm going to give it all away for you. Catch me. Catch me. That's exactly what took place. That was the moment of Kriya Yam Suf. He was ready to give up everything. And that was the moment that the sea split. This is the calling of Mahasita Shekel. And it makes a lot of sense now between me and you. You know, there were so many things that they did once upon a time in biblical days. So many things. I mean, think about this for a minute. You know, we don't even have a zecher today for the Mishkan itself. You're going to make a zecher for the thing that was a maintenance for the Mishkan? Why do we have a zecher to Mahasita Shekel? How many things do we have a zecher for that was actually done way back when, in those years, a Bet HaMikdash and Mishkan, that we still do today? If the Bet HaMikdash is not here, then the Shekalim that was there to maintain the Bet HaMikdash is not here either. And yet, you know what we're keeping alive? We're keeping the Shekalim alive. Till today, we're talking, zecher, don't forget, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, we used to collect shkalim at this time of year, right by Rosh Chodesh Adar, in order to put it for the maintenance of the Bet HaMikdash. And you look at the guy and say, buddy, but the Bet HaMikdash is long gone. And if we don't even have a zecher for the Bet HaMikdash, why should we have a zecher for the shkalim of the Bet HaMikdash? And how many things did we do in those years that were unbelievable things, and yet we lost it? We don't have a zecher. All of a sudden, when it comes to this shekel, mahasita shekel, we make a zecher. This we're not letting go. Yeah, Bet HaMikdash. No Bet HaMikdash. We're still doing it. Remember, reminder. What's the big reminder? What's the big reminder? The reminder is that whether the Bet HaMikdash is here or not, the essence of a Jew is mesirut nefesh. Without it, you're not what it means to be an Oved Hashem. To be Oved Hashem, Avodat HaKodesh, goes hand in hand with Mesirut Nefesh. You're ready to be Moseh Nefesh? It goes. Not. An unbelievable concept. Becca la Gulgolet. So what type of Mesirut Nefesh does Hashem want? You know, we spoke about in the beginning of the class that everyone's talking about this amazing war that's going on. Incredible how Putin just decides, Ki'ilu, one day to just wake up and say, Ukraine, you're mine. Imagine, he just wakes up one morning. He comes in with 100,000 troops, tanks, battalions, explosions all over the place. And our knee-jerk reaction, we start, oh, the Vilna Gaon, oh, this is it. And it's Shemitah, the year of Milchamot. Mamish, like the Gemara said. And this is the time, right up until now. The Gemara says right before the year of Shemitah, there's going to be a judgment to the whole world. Kolot. The kolot are going to be, the judgment to all the nations. No, wasn't that Corona? Every nation was judged. Mi yachya, mi yamut. Oh, we have the ducks lined up now like never before. It's amazing. We have Et Ratzon like you've never seen. And the year after Shemitah, Ben David Ba. I mean, this is it. Buy the tickets and let's call it a day. We got the Nevuah, we got the Simanim, we got Gog, which is the head of Russia. Magog, well, we'll have to find out from the Chafetz Chaim who that is. I have an interpretation to that, but I don't want to say it because I don't know how people are going to take to it. But if you learn the Chafetz Chaim, you'll see he tells you clearly the whole story about Gog and Magog and the Simanim of the signs of what they're going to look like and who they are. Maybe one day we'll do it together when I have it inside. This is not something to say outside. But at least we have everything set up. So what are we missing? We're missing one very big piece of the puzzle. You can have all the Et Ratzon you want. You can have the prophecies with the Simanim from top to bottom. And yes, Hashem set up the perfect setup. But now He looks to me and you and says, no. Where's the Mesirut Nefesh? The difference about our Dor today and the Dor of once upon a time is literally the concept of Mesirut Nefesh. Today, people are on stimulus mode. If it's not coming free, or if I don't have to work too hard for it, I'd rather just sit back, Rabbi, and just sit with the hookah, and just, we'll make a treaty. I don't bother you, you don't bother me. Let me just vegetate. It's a very vegetating generation, especially the young. Nobody wants to work for anything anymore. They got very comfortable. And by the way, that's the reason why in this generation now, there's bigger issues with marriage than any previous generation. You would expect in this generation we have so many therapists, we have so many professionals in the healthcare industry. You would expect that today, like marriage should be a walk in the park. You could literally hire a life coach, and that every 5 minutes they'll be literally calling you and making sure that every step you do is right. And yet, marriages are failing right and left. You want to know why? Because there's an ingredient that's vital to a marriage. And that is to break the teva. Mesirut Nefesh. But that takes work. But today, if things aren't perfect, and it's not comfortable, and it's not 5-star, and it's not high line, and I have to actually work for it hard and schwitz for it, I'm not interested. And because now, once upon a time when they used to live, the older generations, their whole life was Mesirut Nefesh. Because nothing was easy in those years. Everything was a struggle. Making a living was a struggle. I mean, staying alive was a struggle. Staying out of the hair of the goyim was a struggle. Keeping your family good, your kid, it was constant. Every aspect was Mesirut. So therefore, they understood the Parsha Mesirut Nefesh. And they had the ingredient that keeps marriages together as well. They're ready to break their own teva to make it shtim with someone else's teva, marriage. But if today we're on this comfort ride where it's about me and it's not something that I'm ready to sweat over, I'm not going to work too hard. If it's good, I'll take it. And if it's not on a silver platter and I got to actually work for it and schwitz for it, I'm not interested. So once that attitude comes into the generation, then who's going to work when it comes to that first crash of marriage? When the two kids wake up and realize, after a few months of being married, that they actually have to shtim with somebody else. And it's going to take a certain breaking of their own teva. And if they're not ready to be Moser Nefesh, where's the marriage going to go? No one's going to give. No one's going to work. Today we see it constantly. What type of Mesirut Nefesh does Hashem want? Especially today. Rav Noach Weinberg was known to say once that the day you find something to die for is the day you begin to live. How many people feel that they have something in their life that brings them so much purpose that they found something to die for. It's giving them so much, because I want to tell you, we Baruch Hashem, we were zocheh here in the shul to run this beautiful Torah center where, we have classes at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is the Arucha program. Then we have classes at 8 o'clock, at 9 o'clock. And then at night, you'll see the guys. Do you know that there's one series of classes that gives me more hana'ah than anything else? And you wouldn't believe when they are. I mean, you would expect the night Seder, because that's... We're servicing here 100 guys. That would be the calling of the shul. Or maybe the morning Seder, that Yorucha program is beautiful. They were just now Messiahim this week. The entire Hilchot Tzedakah, the entire Hilchot Maser, the Dayanim are coming from Lakewood to test them on all of Hilchot Tzedakah, and all of Hilchot Maser, literally tests, and then they're going to get, not a smicha, but like a certificate of knowledge, so to speak, in those areas of Shulchan Aruch. And then after that big guy, you feel very good. The program is knocking. You know what my favorite program of all the learnings in this shul is? It's from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. In here, this room, every morning, we got a bunch of guys, and I know I told you this already in the past. We started with a challenge of 2 guys, and we told them, just go in an hour late, 1 hour later, and tell me at the end of the month if you made any less money by working an hour less a day. And they came back at the end of the month. I know you heard the story already, and they told me, Rabbi, you lost the challenge. That's okay. I'm ready to man up on it. Just tell me, how much did you lose? I said, no, we didn't lose, but we didn't make the same. I really? Yeah, we made more. Oh, look at that. You made more? One second. You worked an hour less and you made more? He says, yeah. Hey, so why don't we exhaust that recipe? Let's try that again. So if you work 1 hour, let's work 2 hours less. Maybe you make more. And that's what they did. And for the last 5 months, we've been learning every morning stolen time. This is stolen time. Literally, I'm telling you straight up. We start the class in the morning, 9 o'clock, we learn Berachot Be'ayun, Rishonim Aharonim. The opening of the class always is, guys, let's steal time. 10 o'clock, we learn Bet HaLevi, the essays on Bitachon for an hour, and then we do Shmirat HaLashon. Guys, let's steal time. And I see Hazit sometimes, these poor guys. I see sometimes they're shifting in their chairs, because the office is calling them. The world is calling them in those 9 to 11. Where are you? Efata. And it's funny, it's comical for me, the rabbi, to hear sometimes the excuses they make, not to tell them where they really are. Because if somebody would find out where they really are, they'd be in real trouble. Because what? You out of your mind? You're learning? From 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. What do you think this is? A balabatim kolel? What, you went back to kolel? What, you became religious on us? What happened to you? So in order to sidestep all that, these guys are being moser nefesh for learning. They're giving up something that's hard for them to depart with. And they're giving it over instead for Borei Olam. Those 2 hours of learning with Mesirut Nefesh is the sweetest learning of my day. There's a vibe in this room in the mornings that verbally I cannot describe to you. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe you just have to talk to one of the guys that are here. You talk to Albert, you can talk to Chesky, he's here in the morning. They'll tell you there's a certain feeling that is delicious. It's very calming. It's a certain bliss. And the time moves on its own, as if the room is lamala min azman. And we hit 11 o'clock, 11:15, and nobody moves. It's as if they don't want to go. Because it's that enjoyable, that delicious. And then when we close the Gemara, okay, we get up and we go. But that learning with Mesirut Nefesh is different than the learning of any other time. Because here I have to give up. Just to grab that hour or two. I'm stealing time. Hashem says that to me is such a korban. It's an olah. It's a sacrifice. What type of sacrifice is most delicious to Borei Olam? The sacrifice that we need now in this Et Ratzon of Geula. What is the Mesirut Nefesh that Hashem really wants? I want to tell you. Listen to this. There's a gentleman, a Holocaust survivor. He's out from Toronto. He was one of the last trains on its way out to Auschwitz. Him and his Rebbe. And what's amazing is his Rebbe was getting on that train, being pushed in by the Nazis, Yamach Shema. And he was right behind his Rebbe. And the Nazi brought the rifle down right in between the two of them, pushing the Rebbe on as the last guy on the train, and the student, he pushed back, didn't let him come on. As if to say there was no more room on the train, and this is where he drew the line. And the student ran back up, I want to get on the train! He pushed him back. He says, my rabbi's on that train, I need to go with him. Slammed the door. He heard the whistle. The train starts rolling down the platform. He starts running alongside, jogging alongside the train. His Rebbe is right by the window. He screams, Rebbe! Why wasn't I Zeiche? Why are you Zeiche to give your life al Yidei Kiddush Hashem? Why wasn't I Zeiche? I want to die with you. I want to give my life away for Hashem. You were Zeiche. Why aren't I Zeiche? What did I come up short? Why wasn't I Zeiche? And the Rebbe peers and leans over the window and he says to my Talmud, you got it wrong. I did not choose to come on this train. They forced me on this train to give my life away for Hashem. But I want to tell you, I'm going to die al Yidei Kiddush Hashem. But it's not nearly as great as your opportunity, because you will be able to live every day al Yidei Kiddush Hashem. Those 6 million were known as the 6 million Kiddushim of Klal Yisrael. They died al Yidei Kiddush Hashem. But you know what the Torah says? Kiddushim tihiyu. Do you know what the word tihiyu means? You should continue to be. Wait 1 second. If Kiddushim means to die al Yidei Kiddush Hashem, game over. How do you then tell me the word tihiyu, to go weiter? How could you be Kiddushim and go further? That's it. It's over. Spanish Inquisition. They jumped into the fires, saying, screaming, Shema Yisrael, al Yidei Kiddush Hashem. That's it. It was over. Kiddushim means to die al Yidei Kiddush Hashem. No. There's a bigger Kiddush Hashem than dying al Yidei Kiddush Hashem. And that's to live al Yidei Kiddush Hashem. To be able to give up something for Hashem every day. And come back tomorrow and do it again. And come back tomorrow and do it again. And come back tomorrow and do it again. Yitzchak Avinu, guys, I don't know if you ever saw it with this type of a spin, with this type of a light. But Hashem told Yitzchak Avinu, Abraham, I want you to take et bincha, et yichidcha, asher ahavta, et Yitzchak, and bring him on Har HaMoriah, and bring him and shecht him, that he should die al Yidei Kiddush Hashem. And at the last minute, Hashem says, wait! According to Or Chaim, he actually did it. Tchiyat HaMetim. But the bottom line is, Hashem said, wait. Now that you are ready to die for me, now do this every day. Get off the Mizbeach. I wanted you to feel what it means to die for me. You tasted it? You tasted what it means to die? Now, could you mirror that for the rest of your life every day? That's what Akedat Yitzchak was about. He didn't let him actually die. He gave him the time of what it means to die. And now live your life. This is the way I want you to live. Being ready to die, Akedat Yitzchak every day. Kedoshim Tihiyu. Said the Rebbe to the Talmud, I didn't have a choice. They shoved me on this train. I'm going to die al yidei Kiddush Hashem. But my Kiddush Hashem is once and final. You have a choice to live every single day al yidei Kiddush Hashem. Be mekadosh to Ribbono Shel Olam today. Give up something for Him today. And the beauty is you can come back tomorrow and do it again. And then come back tomorrow and do it again. And that's the Mahatzita Shekel. The Mahatzita Shekel is a form of becca. It's a form of Mesirut Nefesh. It's a form of breaking your teva today and being able to come back tomorrow and do it again. And then doing it again the next day. And doing it again the next day. So your whole life is a life of Mesirut Nefesh. Your whole life is a life of Kiddush Hashem. That's what Chazal tell us. The story of Ur Kasdim, Abraham Avinu jumping to the fire al yidei Kiddush Hashem, is not mentioned in the Torah at all. What do you mean? That's one of the greatest moments in the history of Abraham Avinu. He jumped into the fire in the face of Nimrod. Hashem made this unbelievable miracle and saved him. Kibshana Ish. Don't you want to report that to us? No. You know where we know that story from? From two words in the Torah, Ur Kasdim. And we need a Rashi to bring up a Midrash to tell us, by the way, Stam, Agavorche, you want to know why it's called Ur Kasdim? Because a great story happened there. Really? You have to be Meramez to me? Such a great story. Tell me the story! No. Ur Kasdim, a Meramez with two words. But Lech Lecha, to follow me every day, to be ready to die for me every day, that gets a whole parsha in the Torah. Unbelievable. Because to die, you die once. But to live, you live every day. That's the Mesirut Nefesh that's bigger to Borei Olam. And that's why everybody talks about the famous Gemarot. Someone that's ready to die of the Kiddush Hashem, they go directly up to Olam Haba. They enter the Mechitzat of Kisei HaChavod, that not even the angels are allowed to enter their Mechitzah. And that's someone that died al Yidei Kiddush Hashem once. But if you're becca la gulgolet, if you're able to be megalgel, the becca means to smash. Becca means to break the teva, break the nefesh. Machatzita shekel, shekel gematria nefesh. Take the nefesh and break it for me. That's the way you build a mishkan. That's the way you build a yid. Where every day you come back and give me another mahatzita shekel. Give me another mahatzita shekel. Give me another little mesirut nefesh. If he died once and he's allowed into the mechitza that angels aren't allowed into, could you imagine if he did that every day? That's the uptight of a Jew. Lech lecha. Follow me every day. Be willing to die for me and give away every day and come back tomorrow and do it again. And come back tomorrow and do it again. This is the Mesirut Nefesh that Hashem really wants. More than anything. Kidoshim Tihiyu. Better to die for me, live for me with great Mesirut Nefesh. Our generation, we have it in us. We're good people. We have such hearts. I met people over the years. These guys blow my mind, some of these people. What they've done for Klal Yisrael, the organizations they opened, the hearts that they have. But even the common people, at the right moment, you catch them in the right spotlight, at the right moment, when nobody knows. There's no glitz, there's no glamour, and there's no camera running. It's them and God in a corner somewhere, doing something that they don't want anybody to find out about. They don't want it to go into the papers, and they don't definitely want it to go viral. And that moment, they cherish. I'll never, you speak to them, they'll tell you, I'll never give up that. It's only between me and Hashem. That moment, I carry myself on that moment because I literally gave up blood for Hashem on that moment, and He knows. And my whole life is on that moment. It's amazing how when a Jew is Moser Nefesh V'Hashem, he redefines his own nefesh, his own atzmiut. It's a feeling that's beyond. So the Sheila is, the bombs are going off. The news is raging. Klal Yisrael standing in awe, trying to figure out where this is going to go. And like every great moment in history, we need a nachshon to break it open. And the question is, we walk out tonight, we ask ourselves, what is it? What's going to be that Mesirut Nefesh? What's going to be that thing that I'm going to do that's going to bring Klal Yisrael a step closer? Becca la Gulgolet. Thank you for listening, gentlemen.